Yes, Smriti,
Okay,
you're
Manas,
live
can we
now.
get started?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the third event from the IIA Bombay Chapter Women's Circle. We are joined by Abhishek Banerjee today from EY. He's going to take us through the topic for today, which is on a digital theme. So, innovative methods to carry out internal audit. That is the topic for our discussion today. He will be taking us through digital transformation, which is currently ongoing, and its relation to internal audit and what exactly is changing for internal audit. He's also going to set the agenda for control automation across business and how internal audit could drive that change. He will touch upon control automation, including RPA, and how internal audit will influence investments in RPA. He will be talking about analytics as well. And he will also look at certain other details in terms of analytics, which covers contract risk management, compliance management, treasury, hedge risk, cyber, etc. And we will conclude with a discussion on, is IA a third line of defense? And he will throw light on some of those discussion points. So just to introduce Abhishek, he has been with EY for the last 10 years. He actually manages he's responsible for client delivery and managing client relationships for real estate, hospitality, construction, infrastructure across India and other countries as well, which includes Middle East and Southeast Asia. He has a rich experience of over 17 years in the related industry. He's focused primarily on his skills revolve around organizational transformation, technology transformations, operational excellence, cost optimization, risk management, of course, internal audit, as well as program management. He has experience in leading organizational-wide transformation projects and performance improvement projects, especially of the top 10 real estate developers in India. He's also worked with retail mall developers and owners, hotel operators, asset owners, etc. He's led many operational excellence and cost optimization initiatives, especially for hotel chains, including a leading luxury hotel chain in the world. He has led several risk and internal control reviews and related engagements. And he's also led several transformation engagements, such as sales and CRM functions for residential real estate, including design and implementation of technology and process initiatives for real estate developers and investors in India. So with this, I welcome Abhishek to take us through the webinar today. Thank you, Abhishek, so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you. And that long introduction made me feel pretty old, considering that seeing that I've been working for a long, long time. Good afternoon, everyone. And since this is right after Diwali, wish everyone a very happy Diwali, a little belated. And those who follow the Samvat, a very happy New Year and a great New Year ahead. Thank you again to the West India for this chapter for inviting me. I hope I can share some of our thoughts, ideas, as well as experience with you. I've got a PPT. I mean, unfortunately, as consultants, we can't do much without PPT, so bear with me. And as Smriti explained, we'll take some of those questions as they come and park them for the time being and take them up at the end of the session. I'll try and cover all the things that Smriti spoke about. But there are, of course, few things which make more sense and has more impact on business than few others. So I'll take them basis how we are seeing things in the market across industries, and of course some industries are different than others. So let me just put the webcam away from the screen and get on with the presentation. I hope everyone will see the slide. So what we're covering today is what we call as methods. I won't say innovative, but methods to carry into audit. Most of you are practitioners, either providing it as a service or doing it as part of an organization. Many of the stuff that I will pick up right now and I'll detail for you maybe something that you've gone through and probably are experts on them. So with this sound repetitive, please bear with me because not everything is fresh out the oven. A lot of things have been cooking for a while, and some of these are now ready to be actually adopted, and some are still in the process of POCs and use cases are being developed. So with that, I'll just jump right in. So what are we going to cover? Quick agenda. Everyone's talking about digital transformation. Everyone's talking about digital first everything. So what happens to IA? From whatever we are seeing, of course, as service providers, we are seeing prices going down. So we don't know if that's going to be a onward-going agenda for everyone. But yes, there are pressure on people. There's pressure on delivery timelines, and there's pressure on costs. Control automation, it's a subject that's been always being discussed. At least my total 17 years of experience across 3 Big Fours, it's always been there. I've seen things evolve, but obviously the evolution in the last few months has been significantly fast-paced as well as disruptive in a way than it has been over the last 15, 20 years that we have been working in this field. Control automation, I'm sure everyone knows about RPA, but what does RPA do to IA and what can IA do to RPA in a business is something that I'll touch upon. Analytics is a very broad word. It's used quite liberally, it's abused quite liberally. I'm going to take you through some of the examples of how we have used it in Audit and how we intend to use it, without, of course, sharing names of clients, but giving you some real-life context as well as experience, and how analytics can, in the future, actually replace some of the things that we as introverters have taken for granted as part of the end-to-audit life cycle, how that's going to probably change. And we are seeing some of the changes, but how those will happen in the future. With that, I'll just move on. Just 1 second. Yes. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the thing, one thing is very important, and as Pradeep shared with you, I look at asset build, capex cycles, mostly emerging markets. When we look at the banking, the technology services companies, the maturity levels in adopting as well as utilizing these enablers is very high as compared to some of those other sectors. So obviously, the entire adoption of digital in delivery, in design, as well as in providing the control assurance framework, there's a vast amount of difference. So I'm going to keep myself centered around how we are seeing some of the more non-MNCs, large organizations, domestic organizations evolve, as well as non-banking, non-tech organizations, because the more services-oriented organizations, the easier it is to get adoption, simply because a lot of development cycles of the processes have actually jumped the 80s and 90s and other things, and then straight away started in 2000, whereas there's a lot of legacy in the older ways of doing things. Geographic spread, cost base, people cost is still a very, very significant element in doing some of these audits, and of course, all my colleagues who are chartered accountants understand how that goes quite often, and sometimes detrimental to the individual's growth monetarily. Regulatory activism, this is not something that we are not seeing. A lot of regulatory activism, specifically on the compliance side, whether it is GST, whether it is other Companies Act related activities, as well as the labor laws, etc. So that's again a kind of a driver which changes adoption. And finally, and most importantly, the management and the governance culture of the organization will also determine how fast, how quickly some of these ideas are adopted and implemented and supported, because sometimes you do things, but they need support to be sustained. So that's also an important element of how technology is being adopted and implemented. So on the same theme, what we have witnessed, and I as a partner for a few last few years working across various geographies, mostly in the emerging markets, believe that transformation, and when I say transformation digitally, I'm talking about internal audit controls, risk management. I'm not talking about sales or processes related to operations. Digital transformation impact across the risk management and audit has been very different. IA was an early adopter. A lot of things that a lot of organizations did, and many of you probably are early adopters of some of the thoughts around compliance automation, including audit protocol automation, release of audit memos, scope, report standardization, response standardization, action taken report standardization. All of those were something that I had adopted, and in some cases, from my personal experience, even last 10 years ago, a lot of people had done it. But beyond that, how do we mature to actually make a lot of sustainable investments in IA becoming self-driven? Audit not being something that happens post facto, but something that actually enables decision making in real time. That's where this divergence started happening. And this last year, and I'm sure all of you here, or at least most of you here would have seen the technology, the part of the business which deals with technology, part of the business which deals with customer, the part of the business which deals with sales and operations across organizations, whether it's manufacturing, services in some cases, or production process plants. Those guys have just picked up various point solutions, various technology, mobile applications, contactless sales, contactless sales representative management, on field management. All of those things have happened. Now, how does IA get embedded into that, and how does IA become as agile as the rest of the business is trying to become? Because IA at the end of the day is a support function. It's not the driver of the business, but it is where Smriti said, do we continue to remain as third line of defense? And the question therefore is, if somebody else, which is the part of the business which thinks digital transformation and move on, if IA doesn't embed at that point, it's very difficult for IA to play catch up later on, because you're still working on figuring out how to deal with as simple as a question that I will ask subsequently. RPA governance. What happens to the data if you actually use a RPA, which is a third-party managed service? What happens to the data if you are actually using some bots which has it's automating call centers, etc., etc. And then the audit itself becomes difficult because you have not embedded certain controls upfront when you actually design the RPA or the governance of the RPA itself. So what I'm saying, and this is my personal experience because I'm sharing it from being in the market and working with some of the clients, and I'm sure some of you would find resonance in what I'm saying. There is a complete convergence of traditional risk management and traditional IA in what we see today and going ahead. And there's a significant blurring of boundaries between cyber risk, tech risk, which is basically your software asset management, software asset development, your reputation risk, which is board matter, governance, your regulatory, other compliances, including labor establishment, and the whole internal controls environment. There's a complete blurring of that happening. Here's an example. How do you PV when was a lockdown? We never thought of that, right? PV was always, and I'm not talking from a statutory auditor's point of view, purely into auditor. PV at the end of the year, all in the body, period close processes, was something that people used to go and do. Now I can't do. So how do I use drone? How do I use mobile image and actually do quantification? Can I do some kind of solutions around, many of you would have heard, these are basically volumetric assessment using mobile camera analytics that you can do. But these are stuff that's already there, it's not being created, but these are being adopted for audit. These are being adopted for operations or controls, which were more in the procurement or GR domain or even operations domain. How can we bring them in? So Now it's not about bringing it back and doing a PV after management has given you a go ahead, but actually being able to do anytime, anywhere, from anywhere, and getting a report almost in real time. Continue with the same thoughts and in the same line of questioning of what we do as IA professionals. We've seen a lot of investment in data. A lot of people, a lot of organizations made it too large, and in some cases even smaller ones are investing in data warehousing and data lake creation, federated data architecture. I'll pick up some of those later. What it does is it creates newer and different ways for doing IT. Intelligent automation, whether it is automation of as simple as what you probably all of you have seen is going to your office, doing your apps on office, putting your self-declarations, and that's one of the basic intelligent automation through a mobile app. Going ahead, you actually have, I was talking to some of my clients, you actually have buildings where you do not have your ID card. You have to do facial recognition, and we don't go into privacy issues separately. But when you do that, you're basically doing your temperature check, you know what was your historical data of health declaration, how often have you come and not come, if somebody's been missing from work, has taken leave, not shown up, there are certain other analytics that are showing up that this person, while he or she has taken leave, just check whether there was issues related to health, etc. So there's much more intelligent automation is coming on top of the very simple apps and other things that we have started seeing in the what we call as new workplace or workplace of the future. RPA again brings a lot of synergy between management and audit controls. As simple a thing as RPA for bank people. Now, bank reconciliation is something that people used to do standard in the finance in the accounting team, part of their period end processes. That gets automated. Either the bank is providing the RPA or you are providing the RPA platform which pulls data from various banks. That gets automatically audited by an auditor if they require to do it. And therefore, the whole process of check which used to be done on accuracy and adequacy of bank reconciliation is automated completely. Now, that's a very simple step. We'll take some of those other simple steps as we go ahead. A very simple thing that RPA is doing, and obviously saving time and FTEs when you go into more complex audits. Reporting automation, we have already seen like 10, 15 years, and many of you are using, right? Audit protocol automation that I spoke of a few minutes ago. But RPA is doing taking away that one second. If somebody is uploading the data as action taken, RPA is reading it through an OCR and just trying to make sense whether this is the actual response that is supposed to be provided. In a large global or even large domestic audit universe, some of these things can save you a significant amount of time and energy. May not be high cost time, but at least a lot of time, because somebody uploads something, you get an email saying we need to audit because our respondee has responded with the action taken. Somebody goes and looks at the document, realizes the document doesn't make sense. Sometimes again a reminder, that loop itself keeps going on. That loop automatically gets automated with the RPA. Then you have, obviously, it will not be a simple RPA, but including some machine learning, which comes over time. But it saves you time, and that time can be used for something else. Predictive modeling of controls is a very interesting one. We're working on something, we have done pieces of this with clients. If you have data, and if you have data by, let's say, purchase to pay, and you're basically PO generation as a process, and within that, you have category managers in the procurement team in a large organization who's generating certain amount of procurement data. If you can correlate who was on leave, which login has generated a PO, which vendor is getting those kind of POs, is there a correlation, there is a pattern between who generates at what pricing, to which vendor, you can actually create a dynamic control environment, which basically means that if a category of a product, or it's a certain type of vendor, or it's a certain type of internal people who are raising a purchase order, the risk threshold changes automatically. So you will have a single brush of control that is looking at field procurement for production versus procurement of certain chemicals for facilities management. It completely automates based on volume, based on value, based on vendor, based on environmental concerns. For example, if you have CSR models or if you have a green part of your business has said that we will reduce carbon footprints, all of those gets readily automated when your procurement process is being designed in RPA. And then audit can actually check, did I buy a product from a vendor who's meeting my carbon footprint goals? Did I buy a product which is certified to be green? And did I use all the other commercial levers that I was supposed to do? And then the machine itself starts learning as to how much should I tweak. Plus 5%, plus minus is what I should give to, let's say, a very unique product, vis-a-vis plus minus only 2% of deviation allowed to someone in pricing who's buying a commodity product. There are a lot of other things that are happening, and I'm not going to touch upon that in this because the time doesn't permit, but I'll come back to that very simply. So somebody might say that what do you do with drones? What do you do with handheld devices? For example, if you're actually doing survey, especially survey in pipeline business or survey in mining or a survey in disaster management activities, etc., where you have physical count to be done, you have volumetric counts to be done. You can actually use a lot of handheld devices which comes with LiDAR like technology, which allows you to actually do volumetric assessment real time, sitting in one place or using a correlated drone. But at the end of the day, what you're generating is data. And that data allows you to do analytics or it allows you to do automation. So we're going to stick to those two themes. But there's a whole bunch of new technology which is raising availability of data. So drones, mobile technology, for example, for a restaurant client of ours, which has a significant footprint, more than 300-400 outlets across the country, they typically do about 5 to 10 restaurants every week, mystery audits, right? And I'm sure most of you have mystery audits. But these mystery audits are done by not very well trained auditors, but someone basically early stage auditors, first job kind of people. Then they go with a kind of a checklist and they go and check. Then they kind of generate a report out of that. Many times there's no image corroborating the issue, there is no video corroborating the element. So what are you doing? You simply create an app, the app comes to the. So any auditor can be activated tonight with the address of a restaurant tomorrow morning, that is he or she has to go. They get the entire FAR download on the mobile phone. They get all the guys who are going to be working in the staff. They have the full files to the extent that is required to be audited, the entire audit checklist, and the mobile phone they have to go and do an audit based on that. They can also have live support from the audit help desk of the organization, where somebody senior is continuously doing it day in day out and train the person. And of course, they can add pictures, videos, geo-stamping, etc.
Abhishek, sorry to interrupt. Could you come a little bit closer to the mic? Your the voice is not clear.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. Sorry. For all the digital thing, it all depends on your Wi-Fi connection. That's the weakest link. So we're going to talk about some of these ideas, how they're getting implemented. But most importantly, what's happening is you have data. You have more and more data getting created. And how do you actually leverage that data in the most efficient way to bring in IA improvements, control environment improvements, and actually converge IA as not remaining as only assurance, but also design the first and second line of defense. Because if you do not embed IA in the first and second, ability of IA to bring the efficiency while remaining third line diminishes significantly, and over time it will be probably impactful on the organization. So I'm going to jump to these 4 things that I'm going to cover now, going ahead. The first part, I'm going to talk about analytics, how it's being used, why it's being used. I'm sure you've heard of this many times ago. So as I said again, I repeat myself, if you think of anything repetitive, please bear with me and I'll try to, and if you have any comments, please share so that I know that you can move faster. Subsequently, we'll cover control automation. In the automation, how analytics can improve automation continuously, which is basically continuous monitoring, and then what happens to IA going forward. How we look at it next 2-3 years. To be very honest, our leadership, my bosses keep saying, boss will be out of job if we don't have analytics, if we don't have automation, if we don't have embedded intelligent automation, which will do the audits next few years. Because if human beings keep doing it, our ability to actually work with such humongous amount of data that's been generated every day, it's not there. We need to get into automation. We need to get into data being used as the first source of truth, and then everything else. So with that, let's move into saying what does IA do with analytics. The first thing is that IA can and IA should be part of the following process of activities that are happening in organizations, either right now or has happened in the past or will happen, depending on the maturity of the organization. The data lake itself, where does data sit? How much data comes in? What data comes in? In what format does it come in? Is it structured data? Is it unstructured data? If IA doesn't have a say in that, you will end up with risk assessment, risk mitigation planning, but when you actually go for testing, you will realize that the data lake does not provide you the information. You're back to the standard way of doing audit, which is based on sampling. But if we design the data architecture, especially the data lake architecture, you're actually giving significantly valuable input to the organization to create things that from where you can actually improve the control environment and the assurance framework. Customer insights, CRM or sales captures it. They're keeping it somewhere. How is that structured to actually give you audit inputs? And this is an audit where you're not actually testing effectiveness of it, you're actually improving how the insights are coming. So that's one area we found IA to be not getting involved, but I think we are working to actually creating process changes to ensure that IA or risk or both are part of the design of how you're actually extracting customer insights and how you're using that either for product enhancements or for sales service and post-service, post-sales support, as well as referral and retention of customers. RPA selection, we spoke about it, the governance of the bots, the reusability of the bots, the platform itself that you're using. It could be a simple, even a simple mobile phone or a simple tab can be an RPA, or you can have a very significant large platform that you use on a SaaS basis as a managed service. IA gets involved there, so you know exactly what data can you get from the RPA service provider, what kind of information can you extract from them so that that improves your IA outputs. Control imperatives with the data architecture. How does two sets of data talk to each other? Should it talk directly in the database that you're creating from the data, or it should happen in some staging softwares? What kind of platforms you want to create for this talking of data? We'll give an example, fuel purchase data with vehicle running data. Now, it's not necessarily that all fuel purchases are correlated with the vehicle running. You do have a middle ground, which is basically your fuel dispenser. I'm talking about large mines or large road projects or large capex projects where you have fuel dispensers moving around. The buying from the fuel depot is happening on the dispenser. The dispenser then loads fuel into the vehicles. They don't probably have data, or they may have data either in a mobile device. Where does it go and sit? How does it happen? So IA can play a significant role in that, and there's a significant value add if IA can do that. Prototyping, use case assessment of endpoint technologies, whether it is facial rec, whether it is geofencing at your projects or your factories, whether it is correlating workmen with your biometrics. Now, biometrics is out, so again, you're talking about facial rec or other mobile device-based rostering, as well as your attendance management. All of this with the ideas that IA has and the experience that it has can actually improve the fundamental output that the organization gets from these technologies. So what I'm trying to say is basically IA should be part of whenever you're assessing, evaluating, adopting and implementing a new technology. IA should not come later. IA should not come to check what was your UAT versus what have you got. That's going to completely not add value. IA should be part of the design itself to say, this is how my process should work in the technology, this is how the workflow should be designed, because then the value add is significant. Digital first processes, wherever organizations are building, the cyber risk, the tech risk, the sustainability, the tech sustainability risk, the life cycle and the total cost of ownership risk, all of this management does, or the business user group does. But IA can get a look at it, they will be, and this is our experience. IA actually makes it better. And IA is able to make it more sustainable. And most importantly, IA actually makes it better to use when you're using the same investment for a dual purpose of control environment optimization. There are a few more things like data processing, DMS, document management systems, privacy and tech we covered, outsourcing and operating model changes, primarily when you're using third-party platforms for either analytics, RPA, managed services for document management, basic stuff like OCR assessment in our shared services. All of those, if IA can get involved, they improve. Now, why? And what should IA do to make sure that they are value adding in any of these processes where they can embed themselves? We need the right people for sure. People who can understand what's happening, who can actually look at some of the codes as well. IA can actually improve the value delivery models, not just the cost benefit to the organization, but over time, how that will add control environment improvements and therefore savings to the organizations, either in terms of real cash or in terms of efficiency. And of course, looking at how we can create center of excellence. One thing that comes to my mind is like 10, 15 years ago, revenue assurance was a massive area, not necessarily IA, but a standalone part of assurance framework was revenue assurance, primarily in some organizations which had high B2C transactions. You don't hear of that too much anymore, because a lot of that processes have already become automated in some form or the other. What are the other processes which can do that? And that's where IA plays a role of creating a center of excellence, which keeps thinking about which processes can actually become more automated and therefore less human dependent, less human intelligence independent. I'll quickly go through this because this is something you all know. I don't want to spend too much time. So the role of IA, using technology, using digital as an enabler and a leverage process improvement, significant opportunities for IA to add there. The design of the KPIs, because organization, management, their bonuses, their payouts, their performance agenda, everything linked to their KPI. How is the data linked to the KPI? Testing of those KPIs to ensure that there's enough data that somebody can correlate it. So the entire enablement of transparency in the processes, wherever it's available to be done as well as allowed to be done. Actually measuring those KPIs using data. You can do a lot of KPI measuring now. I'm sure most of you are doing through dashboarding, etc., using analytics. As simple as your manpower performance on the blue collar side in a factory, your performance of key tasks in a project business or a capex cycle, your delivery organization for any of your support services. All of those can be measured, and all of those KPIs can be something that IA can actually improve. And that's one area that we believe that technology, data, analytics, and IA can actually work significantly to improve the KPIs, both the design and the monitoring. How do you go from the traditional root causing to actually saying points of failure? For example, and I'm taking a very simple example, which many of you probably would have seen, which is, let's say, on administrative cost. People going and spending vehicle money on traveling. This is something that happens a lot when you are in project business or infrastructure business. So you are actually making a road. Let's take a live example without naming. You're actually making a road. It's about a 50 to 60 kilometer length road. You have work happening in various sections. You have one project site office. All the supervisors, all the project managers come in the morning to the site office. Some come from one side, some other come from one side. 5, 6, 7 vehicles are running. You actually come to office, you punch in, you do your morning meeting. Then all these vehicles again move back and go to their individual chainage linkage where they are supposed to do their work. So I basically run 10, 12 vehicles by doing both sides for maybe 5, 10 people, and I've consumed fuel. Now, there is no control failure in this. There is absolutely no control failure. This is the business process. What we are trying to assume is, can I improve my business process, reduce my cost, and what will be the IA role? So what does IA come and do? IA comes and says, why do these people come? So they do a morning meeting. Besides the cultural or the emotional aspect of it, actual functional areas, there's a morning meeting and there is a attendance. So can we move the attendance to a mobile phone? Every person who comes to their own respective part of that 60 kilometer gets in there, switches on their application, takes their attendance. So my vehicles stops moving. 5 vehicles, let's say 20 kilometers each. So that's 100 kilometers saved at whatever 10 rupees. That's my daily saving. Next, the time. They start at 9 o'clock, they go to the office at 10 o'clock, they go back to the site at 10:30. That's 1.5 hours of FTE time of senior resources saved on a site. That's another advantage that automation is bringing, and IA drives that. Of course, there is a business themselves do it. In many cases, they may. But if you see that, it's not changing the way of life unless IA comes and says, why are you doing it? There's no need to do it. So that's another area which we look at, some business process management, process improvement, and this goes through all of these things like shared services, mergers and acquisitions. Typically, IA doesn't get into M&As, but there's a whole host of things that IA can do now because there's data. If you're actually creating virtual data rooms, IA can continuously see there is improvement in the virtual data room that you can do. Basis compliances, reporting tags, quality of reporting tags, whatever is going to virtual data room can be audited by IA before it goes. Any material compliance and non-compliance issues that can be actually there in the virtual data room can be continuously audited by IA and entered before any other third party is doing their DD. So that's another area where IA is expanding their scope and entering new areas where traditionally normal IA wouldn't have entered. Tech implementation, the whole point that I made on the first slide, which is entering the whole sphere of requirement gathering, user specification, UAT, and post-implementation. If IA can see that as a value exercise, there is opportunities to do. This is where we are seeing IA moving into because there's a value add that's being created. I've covered CAPEX cycles, geographic risk assessment models. These are all data driven. Traditionally, risk used to do this. As I said, there's a confluence of risk and intake controls that are happening. Updating the geographic risk, updating various scenarios, creating potential models that will impact the business processes. For example, today we are seeing supply chain implication, not just because of COVID, but also geopolitical scene. These were traditional areas where strategy and other people involved, but given the data, given the humongous data of where my ships are coming from, whichever ports they are coming into, what are they bringing into my business, what is it that I'm sending out, which port are they getting shipped out of, all this data is available for IA to actually create risk models of saying if something happens in South China Sea, what part of my business is impacted? If something happens in the Middle East, what part of my business will impact? What inbound, what outbound, which shipping lines, etc., etc., etc. So that's a very simple tool of analytics that can be used basis the current set of data that you have. Moving on. So what will analytics and how will analytics transform IA? So we're not saying about IA transforming analytics. Analytics is an evolving lab. What will it do to IA? How are we seeing it? Of course, very simple one. You are moving away. Everyone, I'm sure all of you here have realized that a lot of your traditional testing methodology, sampling bases are getting changed and revised. If I have data and if I have analytics layer on top of it, I probably will do sampling based on exceptions rather than do sampling and then find exceptions. So you actually leaving the first testing plan on the analytics to do. How many POs were cancelled to a particular vendor? Now that used to be done traditionally by the team below doing audit of a PO or purchase to pay cycle. Now analytics is giving month on month, vendor by vendor, purchase manager by purchase manager, product by product manager, any of those data you want, any slice and dicing you have it. Now you decide what do you want to go and do audit. What do we do audit in that? Why was it cancelled? Was it a business issue? Was it a commercial issue? Was it something else? So that's the change that analytics brings. Very simple terms. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are witnessing that. IEF is leveraging business investment, whether it is in data analytics, whether it is in RPA, whether it is in, I wouldn't say machine learning so far because it's all RPA which is doing it, but it will, IEF will do that. And of course, all other tech investments, whether it is applications, APIs for various controls, including your banking, financial controls, treasury operations, all of this, IA will get embedded into it. Why? Because IA will then be asked to design controls which are real time, rather than IA coming back a year later and saying, I'll do audit about the last 1 year's data. Business doesn't want that. Business wants real time assurance that what I've done yesterday, I'm through. Nobody's going to come and hassle me. If you can create an environment of controls and therefore give assurance around that, give it to me real time. So that's one area that IA will need to leverage and will have to deliver. And this is something we are witnessing every day. Next step is the continuous monitoring, which is basically saying that any transaction that crosses, either it gets audited as a green signal saying everything kosher, move on, or it gets parked. Either parked without stopping the transaction or parked by stopping the transaction. That's something that IA will control. IA will be a custodian of that, but how do you design it, what kind of formatting you do for defining the thresholds, how do you create a dynamic play between the control factors that will determine what gets stopped, what moves. So traditional concurrent audit, traditional pre-audit, traditional checks that audit used to do before payment release, all of that is getting automated using analytics, and based on analytics, some amount of machine learning through, I won't say RPA, but even basic workflow systems with learnings of what happened over the last 7, 8, 12 months of data. We actually start generating models, which is automatically machine learning models of saying what needs to be stopped and how does it go into part B, part C, part D, which is different people reviewing it, etc. These are 3 basic and significant changes based on analytics that we are seeing. As I said, there is a correlation between automation as well as analytics. Analytics gives that input to automation, and automation then automates the workflow to move a particular transaction to some site. So we'll take automation in the next few slides. Summary, very quick. How do we actually enhance process and control maturity using analytics? So you start by adopting analytical approaches in your work, which I'm sure all of you, if not, I don't think anybody will have not done it by now. Tools are readily available. People are using basics, Alteryx or Power BI, starting to do the data in that. Of course, you are challenged by your data lake architecture, the ability of Power BI to bring the data, and of course the availability of the data on cloud, etc. So those are technical and infrastructure issues, but that's where you are at the beginning stage. Then you move to the next part, which is you actually embed analytics into the business process. Again, there are same tools that can do, but it will require some amount of automation that you will need to do. Who will run the Power BI? Will bot run the Power BI? How will the data get staged? How will the data get pulled in? What frequency does it? So that's the second stage of maturity. The third one is enforced analytics, where you actually process transactions based on an analytic model in some cases, not everywhere, but at least a very simple example is your credit rating for banking and loans transaction, right? It's analytics. Somebody has got a credit rating report, which is basically a whole bunch of almost the life of a borrower's all his credit history, basis which is getting a score, and basis the score you are generating, whether you want to pay them and what interest rates will you give them. The same model gets reflected in various things. Your vendor priority, vendor negotiation, vendor discounts, vendor credit periods, same with customers, senior customers, new customers, and of course, even people. In your people engagement, you can actually bring analytics to see how the KPIs have been embedded and how somebody has worked for the last 10 years, what are they good at, etc., etc. So this is the threshold where you move from about analytics to actually business completely becoming dependent on analytics. The fourth phase is forensic intelligence and built institutionalized operations. To give you an example, you have a new vendor created, and I'm using purchase to pay because most of you would be fairly and quite deeply understanding this subject. You actually want a new vendor created. So you have a KYC form. A KYC form could be a very simple form which somebody fills on paper and it gets translated into technology, or it could be a vendor managed portal managed by somebody third party. Vendors go and upload there, or vendors are imported based on a third party managed e-portal or e-bidding portal, etc., etc. How do you do a third party risk assessment on that? How do you automatically send somebody who's the vendor from, let's say, a state one to a service provider who's in that state, who then does the processes, uploads the data, provides the report, comes back to the purchase commodity manager or the purchase category manager, and actually says that we have done the processes as required. Here is the data, here is the filing, here are the proofs, and the person is whatever, amber, red, green, the vendor. So that's where we move with analytics and RPA, which is process automation, third-party managed services integrated into it. And you can re-perform this at any point in time. So because you have all the data available, you can send the same report to another agent who can perform the data and give you a sense of it. So that's where you actually corroborate and correlate. And finally, we have the last mile, which today is the last mile that we see, which is where your controls are actually self-serving and repetitively improving on their own. This could be ideally done with machine learning or some amount of AI that is being rudimentally used right now, but we'll see a significant amount of that. I'll give you one example, and this is something that's being done. A purchase order is raised on a particular vendor in a particular city for a particular item. Now, this is a must-deliver short span item. Let's take example of concrete for a particular building or a flyover or a project. This is being sent through WhatsApp. So your purchase order is going through WhatsApp. Obviously, that WhatsApp is integrated with your ERP or your accounting/purchase systems. The vendor opens that WhatsApp. He's asked to respond back. The response becomes a purchase order acceptance. The purchase order acceptance is then passed in. The vendor is now required to give me three things in a time-bound manner. He's supposed to give me the pro forma. He's supposed to give me the time of dispatch or the time of delivery, and the entire vehicle history if there's a vehicle involved, which means what's the vehicle, whether the vehicle has, and this all depends on obviously the controls that you build in, but you basically either get a lorry receipt or you get the whole history of how the vehicle is coming, which depot it is being sent out of, what time will it come to your gate, and so on and so forth. When it does come to your gate, your guard or yours doing the GR actually has a mobile application to validate the same thing in WhatsApp or something similar based on API, approves the material or sends it for testing depending on what the nature of material is. So you know when the vehicle entered. You also have integrated vehicle weighment slip, which is coming from the weighbridge. If it's not on the site, it's coming from a third-party weighbridge, which is integrated with your API. What have we done here? We basically eliminated paper. There is no paper. to actually have from PO to GR to quality report to payment bid strip to LR, all the items completely paperless, all digitally available, including scans or actually digitized outputs. And then you can run automation, a complete analysis of whether the vehicle was, the tare weight was correct or not, whether the vehicle came at a time which is giving me a forensically red alert on a Sunday at 4 o'clock in the morning. All of this audit automatically then puts it into the system, and you actually get a flag saying that on site so and so, from a vendor so and so, there was a vehicle that entered the site, the timing looks suspicious. From the PO release to the dispatch or to the GR, the time looks suspicious, and all of this is automatically happening. Nobody has looked at it, the system does it completely. So that's what we call as matured in using analytics and RPA and automation of workflows to a stage where a lot of the audit is actually completely automated. I'll quickly go through it. I'm sorry, I keep saying quickly, but I'll spend some time. So what does it do? Why should you use it? Why would management want you to use it? And why would you be effectively in very few, in quite a short time, will be asked to use it? Your risk evaluation becomes dynamic, it's not fixed. Your efficiency, reduction in audit hours is significant. We haven't measured, but we believe between what we saw earlier, which is between 2 to 3, you should be able to save about 25 to 30% of your audit hours if you can move the organization from 2 to 3 in terms of the digital enablement that happens in the business. And that's just audit hours. There's obviously savings from the operations side as well. Ability to quantify results much better. If I have videographs, if I have the vehicle number, if I have the login receipt connected to the PO, vendor, everything, the example I gave, your reporting is far more crisper. There's no question of ifs and buts and why. Everything is there, and it's only about what happened, why it happened, can it be stopped if it's required. Recoveries, value, money, savings, all of that is available because you can actually quantify most of the stuff because you have the data. Reduction of progress is one area which people do emphasize upon. It's not necessarily that it can eliminate, but it will definitely reduce because there is an enhanced awareness within an outside organization that there is some kind of surveillance using data, which will therefore require more sophisticated rules to circumvent the processes. Root causing, explaining what could go wrong, the entire whole process of why it's a risk, even if the transaction is not emanated into a actual transgression, becomes easier. You can re-perform the audit as many times based on someone else. So there's no question of where's the data, where's the file, let's re-look at the file, re-performing by somebody else senior. Do not require that kind of investment. You can re-perform much faster if the re-perform is needed, especially in global audits, SOX, or any of those things. This becomes really handy. And finally, you can slowly move towards continuous monitoring, which then takes audit back. You can actually sit anywhere in the world and audit. That's the whole idea of moving from manual physical audit, which we used to do. I'm sure most of us have stopped, towards the future where you will actually sit wherever, open your dashboard, and you'll be able to see by function, by location, by person, by vendor, what are the control thresholds that have been reached, and then you actually create your what you want to audit today. That's exactly what it will come to. I will keep it at the yellow boxes. I'm not going with the same. So obviously, all of you are used to it. I'm just repeating. So revenue, payroll, procurement, manufacturing, fixed assets, treasury, global treasury are already evolved to a large extent, but local treasury, especially banking, if you have bank and cash, significant transactions, your entire record to report, including controls over JVs and entity level controls, specifically management KPIs, functional KPIs, and business KPIs. These are things that can be looked at as your level 1 and level 2 maturity areas. Of course, as you move greater, you're looking at much more things, but the investment versus return has to be always looked at. We are actually looking at, I'm sure many of you would have seen or heard of IoT. The IoT enablement across my factories, across my plant, machinery, third-party rented machinery, all of that is leading to straight away savings on fuel, savings on breakdowns, savings on accidents, and all of those, when you add up, there's a lot of money that's been saved if you're actually doing it the right way. So that's something I'm not covered here, but those are the next steps which will take you from 3 to 4 in the maturity criteria. So moving to the next agenda, which is maturity of control automation and using RPA and intelligent automation. Same thing that we discussed on analytics. How do I make this part of life instead of this being one-off, something exotic, but it's not. It's actually something that you do. There's already a lot of process automation that most organizations have adopted, mostly in the financial, banking, accounting, FSCP processes. Similarly on functional processes as well. From the desktop automation to RPA to cognitive, there is some amount of all of this is happening in most organizations. I would not believe that there is any organization that I've seen in the last 1-2 years where some amount of all three is not there in some form or the other. And it will probably remain that way because there's a cost, there's a benefit, and there is, of course, the improvement agendas that come with it. Let's take off the middle part, which is where most people are today discussing, we are discussing right now. How does RPA help IA and what does RPA do to the business? So it basically is a rule-based thing. It does it. It could be a time-based thing. Run a timesheet assessment for attendance every morning right after 9:30. That's an RPA. It will tell you who are the people who have been continuously coming. Are there people who have come who have reached 52 hours or whatever is the state regulated hours of minimum working per week? All of that becomes very simply doable using an RPA that runs every day, every shift, post every shift, check-in time or check-out time, because check-out time will also give you overtime regulatory norms. So purely talking about compliance to labor laws, just hours of working, overtime, total overtime in a week, always automated. Just by putting an RPA on your biometric in the past or today, whatever other methods you want to do. So a lot of compliance gets automated. What will happen later is we'll actually be able to say, today what happens is this is something comes in audit, then people ask, can you check whether these are unionized or not? Most likely they're unionized, especially in businesses which are in the utilities, mining, infrastructure, etc., or even manufacturing. What will intelligent automation do will ask this question by itself. And the moment the answer is once, twice, thrice given, it will start discerning patterns as to who these people are who are likely to be things where you cannot actually go and stop their abuse of the processes. I'm just giving you one real life example. This happens in shipping, this happens with power plants, and so on and so forth. Some of you would empathize with these kind of issues from your experience. Intelligent cognitive automation will also move to the next step. So I'll give you a very simple example. Today, when somebody needs to excavate, whether for making a road, whether for a building foundation, whether for just cleaning up debris, today we call up a JCB or a Portland and say, okay, let's go do it. Nobody has figured out exactly what is the output that I want to do. We have a broad thing, we have to do X million cubic meter or X thousand cubic meter of work. Is JCB the right machine? Should it be a Portland with a different excavator size? What should be the arm's length? None of those factors are there because today business depends on the project manager, the operations manager, their insights, their experience to decide what's the right one. Tomorrow, the factors will be dependent on how the machine input is actually already factored into my procurement database. All you have to do is feed in the data of what you need to do, what the time, working time you have, what fit you have, and they will tell you what's the machine. The moment you say yes, the machine is this same machine, the purchase order gets, it could be a rental agreement, it could be a wet use, a dry use, whatever is the model of commercial, pre-decided with the vendor, it just does. and the machine keeps running. So your interaction with your procurement team, your purchase acquisition to PO release, to telling the contractor or the supplier that have you received it, where is your vehicle, it all gets eliminated. And you simply have just a selection process, a WhatsApp or an email process, and then the vendor's vehicle, where is it, geotagged it, all of that will be available. Of course, there's investment and there's a correlation. A lot of things the vendor has to do, a lot of things the organization has to do. But as you have seen in the past, the organization will start selecting those vendors who are doing adoption of these things better. Because then eventually the business is doing better both sides, the vendor as well as the user. Another example, and this is actually a real life example, you have taken out the name, global organization, multiple locations across the world, massive audit function, mostly outsourced to various countries, multiple countries in multiple languages, all of that actually still works on a significantly robotized system. Analytics drives almost 50 to 60% of the audit universe. Based on analytics, based on deviations found, the IA team gets involved, and this is across the globe. IA team sits out of one country but looks at all the global transactions that are flowing through various systems. The data lake is integrated across ERPs and across point solutions, which is a significant investment made. But what it does is, I mean, to be very honest, from probably 5 years ago, with almost close to about 1,000 man days per month investment of IA, the organization brings the man day investment in IA down to about 50 a month. And that's the cost saving based on the investment. And this is from IA perspective. Of course, there's operational savings and there's a significant amount of efficiency that comes from various other elements, plus customer satisfaction, experience, etc., etc. What it does is that there is actually, and this is a global organization, there is actually no fixed audit plan. There is no audit plan. There is a monthly audit calendar. There is no yearly audit plan. They decide on what to audit based on how the data is generated and how the data is working. And if there's a movement, whether it is it's a regulatory issue in one country, it's a supply chain issue in another because of geopolitical tensions, or a bomb went up or something else happened. All of that enables the audit team to actually very quickly change the audit plan and look at something that will add value to business. That's the saving that RPA and IA has enabled this organization to, and it's, of course, it's in adoption level, it's one of the top 10 percentile in non-services and non-tech business. But we see significant savings, and therefore there's no going back to old ways if we continue to adopt newer and newer technologies. Where are the RPA opportunities within IA risk management? Simple giving examples of how IA is actually asking organizations, businesses to adopt. So let's say compliance. We talk about blue collar compliance on attendance, total hours of working, as well as your overtime. Now let's look at other things. There's a continuous problem in businesses which uses what we call as department labor, or which uses short-term labor, which is not your blue-collar staff, right? These are labor contractors providing labor. And there's always a challenge from internal auditors to say, have you complied with PF guidelines? Have you complied with ESIC guidelines? And this keeps going on. Especially in sites or projects where you don't have gated fencing, where you can't control the ingress and egress of laborers, etc. What's the solution? The solution is very simple. You actually have a point solution based on a mobile app, on a mobile screen or a camera, which is put in 2 or 3 locations within your site or in your factory. And it actually matches the people's faces with their Aadhaar cards or their PF card, which the contractor has to submit in advance. The moment the PF cards are there, which is also correlated with Aadhaar, then you know exactly who the people are, and then you can actually go back and correlate the monthly payment, contractor labor payment registers, and how much PF they've got on which person, what was their name, this gets completely robotized. All they have to do is scan it using maybe a CAM scanner also, because the OCR quality is very good now. And you get a report as to how many of these vendors, how many of these laborers were on the site on any of the 30 days, their facial rate match, their Aadhaar match, their PF card match versus their name, how much mismatches. And then you actually have a control on the payment of the contractor, because that payment probably will come 5-7 days later. But on the 31st or the 1st, my mistake, on the 1st or the 2nd of the month, audit already has a report of saying where are the discrepancies. So you're not going back and saying, hey, you know what, last 3 months ago, this guy had problems, go and collect back or do rectification. You're not. You're saying there is a challenge in his labor, in his roster, stop payment. So that's one example. Very simple RPA using camera analytics, image analytics, and certain pre-fed data points like Aadhaar as well as PF cards. Where can you use this significantly? I've given a few examples. SOX is one area where we feel a lot of control efficiency can come using RPA. It can also happen in EVs. It can happen in asset monitoring, specifically asset traceability, parent-child, mother-child relationship in your FAR, including within the same machines. So enterprise asset management can be automated through RPA. Someone's going to do a PV and you're actually looking at, let's say, a big machine, but the machine also has certain sub-components which are removable, batteries, maybe a pump, maybe a rotator or a relay. A particular auditor may not know what is there in the machine, but if the audit is in a mobile automated tool, all they do is scan the machine's barcode or put in the feeder code of the machine. They get the entire mother-child relationship. They can even open the machine and ask to see whether the mother-child relationship is actually as per the OEM or there's something else fitted into it. So that's how IA can save breakdown time in future, the risk of breakdown because somebody has used a wrong battery inside or somebody has used a older battery inside and not replaced it with a new because I got a new FAR showing that there's a new battery inside and so on and so forth. So these are all practical examples of how RPA linked to process automation, mobile technology can actually significantly improve the audit quality and savings to the organization. You have already seen this, I think I'll not touch too much, but your simple ATR, which most audit teams do, right? That I gave an example. How can a bot review the ATR data? Not just send an email as a reminder, which is standard feature in any of the audit automation softwares. But after a response comes back, whether it's an email response or an in-system response, can it read the response? Can it assess the response? Can it then flag whether the response meets the minimum threshold of requirement, including OCR read of whatever has been uploaded, and then flag it to the auditor to say whether it can go and check and use discretionary insight or discretionary intelligence to review the output, rather than there is a response, go check it. Then the auditor goes spend some time, figures out it's not the right response, sends out back saying no, your audit is not complete. So that's saving. And if you have a large organization with multiple audits happening in the year, with lots of areas happening, you just add up all these savings, the RPA cost will be definitely paid back within a very short period of time, probably less than a year's time. What should IA do? Because organization is already doing RPA in the investments in various fields, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it is CRM, whether it is product development, whether it is supply chain, commercial, etc., etc. IA needs to be part of the entire RPA universe to actually see where can you embed control automation, where can you embed audit automation, because there will be additional value add over and above what the business use cases have been found to do or the business case has been created. Because typically, business will have activated or identified what savings can you do from an audit perspective. So that's one area that I must try to get embedded. And in my initial slides I shared with you. And going ahead, look at how the RPA process itself can be improved. I give an example. Let's take treasury, specifically treasury, liquid mutual fund transactions, automated mutual fund, sweep out accounts. Okay, so we got simple tools that are doing it. Maybe the bank is doing it automatically, or you have multiple tooling happening in one account, and then you're using another RPA to do all that. What else can I do? So can the RPA give me a sense of saying that from my liquid finance, if my policy allows to take a higher risk, if the threshold value of investment is a little low, can RPA create alerts for the treasury manager or the treasury desk to look at that? And these are not things that are new, because some of the more evolved treasury desks, specifically in the trading community, have already started using it. It's just about adoptions of these use cases in businesses where it is not being used. So you're actually not creating a new RPA, you're basically evaluating use cases from other industries and other functions of the business and coming and looking at it from a wide angle. RPA will obviously allow you to increase the scope and depth of your audits. Let's take the example of deployment of vehicles, especially in any organization where you have significant dependence on vehicles, either in the supply chain or in production. How can you actually improve the per kilometer cost of operation? All the data that goes into that, whether it is the laborers, whether it's a driver, whether it's the spares and consumables, whether it is fuel, breakdown, uptime, if you can actually have all that data, and RPA can model it for you. To give you an example, if you actually take, and this is a real life example, on a fleet of over 400 high-rise big dumpers, we found when we ran IoT-based RPAs, so IoT is giving me the sensor data of the vehicle's load factor, and RPA is actually creating data real time. We actually realized that 20% of the capacity on the moving trucks were not used, which means the trucks were not filled to capacity when they moved. Of the 20%, less than 2%, so overall 2%, less than 10% of the 20% was actual business case where you didn't have enough to move, so therefore the truck will go partly empty. But in most cases, the trucks actually did not carry the full load. Now this is a simple RPA using IoT that enables you to see that you're actually moving vehicle, it's going up and down, burning the fuel, but not delivering the benefit. 400 vehicle fleet, one day, 20%, you take the benefit cost and see how the RPA cost benefit comes out. Alright, going to the next one, IA life cycle and use of analytics. This is how we traditionally do audit. It's still our methodology as a Big Four. I'm sure many of you have adopted some form or the other of the same. So you do a risk assessment, you do audit planning, you do the execution, you do the reporting, you create ADR if the reporting has certain gaps, and then you do a monitoring and response back. So it's a complete view. How can I improve that? Well, we have seen, and we have done this exercise with a fairly large organization outside of India. This goes for a toss completely. Because once you set, you do the risk assessment. That's what you start with. But once you have done the risk assessment, you don't do anything else if you can actually see how much of your risk mitigation controls or risk identifiers are actually digitally available. Once you're able to find what data is available which ties back to your risk mitigation controls or your risk identifiers, a significant portion of those can be automated either from an analytics point of view or if there's investment available from RPA point of view. So I'll take this example. If I can find how much of my data ties back with my risk, my audit sampling becomes completely nil. Because you are now actually looking at the entire set of data available to you to do the audit at any point. You actually look at auditing any function with maybe a week or 10 days advanced warning, but not really advanced preparation. Because you now have data to actually generate those audit observations upfront, and then you actually go and talk to management and say why it happened, rather than you spending time figuring out what happened. Because what happened is coming from the analytics itself. And its question is only why that you do. And then you spend time on the reporting and obtaining action plan, which will squeeze your entire life cycle significantly. I use the word significant because I can't actually put a number, but if you ask me to put a number on this, on a typical cycle, where organizations are spending, let's say, 20, 30 audits in a year, recent audits are about 100, 150 man hours per audit. Those are getting shrunk by 50% if in the first stage of analytics. If you can build an analytic model, straight away save 50% of time in the entire life cycle. That's what's happening right now. It will happen more if there is RPA, there is more investment on the technology, not just from auditing point of view, but also the operation, because just auditing will not help. The operation needs to be also automated. That's what data analytics can do. The sampling is gone, testing is gone, most of the reporting is gone because the dashboards are coming directly. Audit reporting, audit committee reporting can be automated using the dashboards of the audit committee wants to look at real-time reports. Only the inside part is what you actually leave for any of the special events at which you do a formal reporting. 50 to 55% time is saved. So, very simple question. Is it a manual control or is it a manual data and therefore requiring manual control? If not, if the manual control is not there or the data is not manual, both can be automated or is already automated, that's where your savings are. So if you actually open up your RCMs across all your business processes which you audit, look at the data that actually is required based on your vouching sheets, look at whether the control is manual or not, and actually you'll be able to take out what can you automate and what can be use analytics for. If you take time to do the analytics, then you can actually see how much of your RCMs can be automated or can be improved upon by using analytics. So that's how we go about it, saying, let's look at the RCMs. Don't change the risk, don't change the business, because business will not change. But within the RCM, what's the data you need? What are the manual controls? What are the automated controls? What are the partially automated controls? How much of this can be actually translated? And then you will see a business case for you to ask management or yourself about a way to actually ask for investment in analytics. What will it do? And this is a very simplistic layman terms. You obviously have the data on the left-hand side. You have the data acquisition happening from ERP, third-party service providers, data upload using digitalization, basic scans, scan plus OCR, all of that goes and sits in the data lake. From the data lake, you're actually creating two things. In the data lake, you're creating a data quality diagnostic, which should happen as you design the data lake, but once it's done, it's set. It will change as the data changes. For example, when GST happened, you have to obviously go and change. It's a significant change. Even if your transactions are changing, your shipment is moving from 3PL cargoes to actually shipment drops based on airlifting, etc. So those will change. But given normal business, you build the data lake, you set down your priorities in terms of the coding that you do, using any of the systems that you want. Whether you write it in SQL, you write in Python, you write in R, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your vendor is comfortable with. You need to basically come to the next stage, which is where you get the reports, output, test the reports, set the frequency, and I'm not having RPM, simply doing analytics and dashboarding right now. And you can actually get, probably from our experience, especially in non-manufacturing, production environment, infrastructure environment, etc., typically 50%, if there is an ERP that's there, purchase to pay, record to report, AP, AR, you can actually get 35 to 50% of your RACM getting automated from an analytics point of view. So with that, I come to the last section of saying what happens now for audit. From what we are seeing in the market, my personal view, entwined with my larger peer group that works in the market, and what I hear from obviously practitioners also similar to you. We have a set of people that we today work with. We have people who have business understanding, who have been doing a certain amount of sectors or a certain amount of functions for a time being. There are technical skills available. You either use outside technical skills, like for example, in construction, you may use a construction engineer or audit background to a cost accountant. And then you have traditional audit skills, either legal auditors or chartered accountants, mix of both, etc., etc. And it's been evolving over time. It's become intuitive. It's based on experience and learning. This is the right side of what we are seeing today. And I'm giving an example from my personal experience, my team, etc. Over the last 5 years, about 30% of people have actually now become with a background in computer science. They are in employability. They are computer engineers. They are the ones who are designing on-the-fly analytics models for in Python and R. They are the ones who are going to actually build tools which is being used for mobile audits, etc., etc. So you're actually not dependent on a vendor to actually bring in solutions, but you actually have a team that understands the knowledge of the business and a team who can code it and transform that knowledge into a implementable solution that solves the problem. AI ML is outside, but there's a whole bunch of it. There's also a lot of I don't know if I can say this as digital nomads slash modern workplace thing, but there is a whole bunch of people who are coming now who's bringing a holistic outlook to what can happen, not what could go wrong, what can you do. So it's moving away from what can go wrong to what can I do with the data, with the process, with the people. How can I make this more beneficial to my business? And that's part of IA. That's not sitting in strategy or it's not sitting in operational transformation teams. They're sitting in IA. And that's the value add that probably we will all be asked to deliver day in and day out as management become more demanding and audit committees become more demanding. The specialists are still there, people with significant experience on a sector domain or regulatory understanding. Those will remain because they will obviously have a much more consistency. But a whole bunch of the mix is changing of people. What is going on is you actually have people who can understand what the bot is doing, who can create bots, who can manage bots. If the bots go rogue, basically programming errors, you can replace them. So that's part of IA. People who can actually look at productivity improvements, scalability, monetization of ideas, and come back and say this is what IA can add value to the business. Especially if the business is sitting with data. And IA is actually looking at saying, how can the data be monetized? And IA comes with plans which monetizes that data. It's a straight away bottom line impact that IA brings. So there's the expectation that IA can look at a whole host of data that is created by other parts of the business to look at saying what happens. Of course, organizations mature enough are creating their own data. I would say data custodians, who are then thinking of what to do with data, but it's more or less remaining in the domain of sales and marketing. But there's so much other data, there's process data. I'm sure many of you have known that there are manufacturing FMCG organizations which also sells consulting based on what kind of process improvement they have done in their factories and their supply chain as a service to their competition. And that's another area which is value add to the business. We have heard a few names, but there are so many others who are also doing it, and that's a benefit that IA brings to the table as well, if IA focuses on that. Last thing is what's the predictive modeling. This is aligned to what we call as the fifth stage of development, but it's happening in some cases, like for example, sales. I'm sure many of you would have seen your sales team, your marketing team creating propensity models. Who will buy this product? What are the basic criteria of my target segment? And this, if the target segment meets it, what will move them from a fence sitter to buy? So this is called propensity modeling. Now, the sales team does propensity modeling and they've been doing it for a long time. In the audit, what we are doing is we're creating propensity models for breach of control. Where will this control break? Who will break this control most likely and why? And therefore, then you actually start creating controls on a specific set of people, transaction, areas, functions, where the vulnerability exists based on those propensity models. The logic is very similar. If a customer is going to buy your product based on a propensity model, a control environment can be breached by either the system or the person or technology based on similar instigations or benefits, if at all any. So how do you actually create your control environment to focus on those parameters which leads to potential breakdown or divergence from the control environment. So that's the predictive analytics. I'm keeping it very simple. So I'll give you an example. I think I touched upon it. In procurement, on a particular product, on a particular, if there has been errors, you have found issues in the last 3-4 years of audit, the value is high, the transactions are low, the timing of the transactions are something that doesn't fit within a threshold. If the vehicle movement is coming at a time which is just not making sense, if the vehicle itself is not aligned to the general type of vehicle that supplies these items, all of these are inputs that the system is making its predictive model on, and says that if all of these criteria within the threshold falls, then there is something suspicious, please have a relook at it. And that's the predictive model, which starts predicting where the control environment is weak or will likely fail. And with that, we come to the last question: what will we all do? I'm not quoting the source of it, but the fact is that there is consensus in some data points that probably less than 50% of the traditional skills will remain into audit by 2025. The balance 50% is going to be replaced by completely new skills, specifically from analytics, robotics, artificial intelligence, some bit of blockchain, and emerging technologies. Almost 20% of IA's time will go in managing risks that are today not known because of new technologies that are being adopted. So, for example, if your organization says that I'm going to adopt drones for in-plant operations, for example, just surveillance, there's a whole bunch of a can of worms that open up on privacy, on data, on accident insurance if the drone just falls through. Who's going to operate the drone, and the drone operator, the whole bunch of benefits and etc. on HR, so on and so forth is added, whether it's drone, whether it's autonomous vehicle, whether it is autonomous machinery that you would start adopting over the next 2-3 years. So that's going to take away from today's baseline 20 to 25% of time in actually new risks and new types of audits. And we believe that 50% of traditional skills will not be there in the next 5 years. So with that, I end my presentation and open to questions, if any. And Shruti, over to you for any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. That was very insightful. You told us, you talked a lot about use cases, which is really, really interesting because that's how we can practically apply everything that you discussed, and especially the analytics and automation maturity models and curves. That was especially interesting. We are running a little short of time, so we will quickly take 2 questions that the audience has asked. So the first question, Abhishek, is if IA is involved in setting KPIs, would it not be a COI?
You mean a conflict?
Maybe cost of audit, maybe, I think.
I would assume that acronym stands for conflict of interest. Not really, because you're not setting the KPI. You're agreeing to a KPI which is measurable, and measurable in a way which has the right ingredients of data to back it up. So I think the question is good, but I don't think IA is really setting the intent of the KPI. The IA is setting the KPI which is measurable. If the KPI itself is not measurable with the data that's available in the business, it becomes difficult for IA to actually ascertain whether management has delivered it or not. So that was the intent of that element that IA should be part of the KPI. And this KPI is not business KPIs or anything, but primarily looking at, for example, let's say you're actually developing an application for your customers, and you're investing some amount of time. So the application will have a business case. The marketing team, let's say they are developing the app, they will have a cost of acquisition of customer, cost of retention, cost of reuse, and basis that they will have created a business case. Now all of this, if IA is not able to set the gradient of measure, how will IA go and say this app was a failure or a success? That's the intent of saying that IA should be part of the KPI. Not so much to say that what should be the KPI and therefore control it, but more saying how do you measure the KPI? I hope that answers the question.
So thank you, Abhishek. The next question is in IA, analytics maturity model that you talked about, especially level 4, what does forensically sound methodology refer to?
So typically when IA does audit, you basically have risk indicators. Sometimes IA go beyond that and does investigation, but typically IA's ecosystem, the environment in IA's operation does not involve investigation. IA generally sees an assurance framework, a control, a design of control, the test of the design, or the test of the adequacy of that design. If there's a failure, doesn't go and see whether there has been an asset breach, whether there has been a theft, or that there has been a systemic issue with some people or certain processes. That's how IA stops, and IA says, okay, this is where the forensic comes in. They will go and do the forensic assessment of maybe call logs, or they will do computer analytics, they will do all of that thing. IA doesn't get, at least the traditional IA framework, IA doesn't get in that. Now, when you design analytics, you actually build tools that will actually not have you to wait for a forensic, but actually tell you that there is a problem. I'll give you an example. Let's say vehicles, right? And I'm sure most of you as into audit professional, seasoned professional would have seen that a vehicle comes, it has a tailgate, it leaves the goods, it goes down, and there is a reduction in the weight, and you match it with the weight of the material that you're given. But of course, many of you who have done hands-on audit would have seen years, you would have trained water in some places in the truck, the sand filled in some of the areas of the truck, and probably not visible or visible and known to everyone. Somebody sitting doing the GR is already in collusion, etc. But now I've got analytics linked with some form, I won't say IoT, but let's say a camera analytics. I get a vehicle in my gate captures the vehicle image, captures the number plate. There are two parts to this. A manual audit will tell you through RAN.NIC.in what kind of truck this is, what's their size. You can actually also look at pre-auditing this, basically with the LR is with you or the performer is with you, know what is the weighment that should have come. The weightage will tell you what is the weighment that has come. If the vehicle doesn't match, even if by 0.15 or 2%, there is straight away a flag that goes on saying that this vehicle should have this much capacity. My PR says so much capacity, or PO says so much capacity, and actual GR says this much capacity. There is a potential that the GR is probably not matching. Or this vendor or this vehicle has had incidences with us in the past. Be careful. That's where predictive modeling comes in. So what we're doing is we are not waiting for forensic to come and say there are X number of vehicles which actually deployed lesser quantity in your site and you had jacked up the GR. We actually created those possible scenarios for certain set of delivery, vehicle, timing of delivery, timing of who is the guy who's signing the GR, and then actually creating output, which then immediately gives you a red alert that there's something not working here. Don't look at it. It may not be an issue, but at least the flags are already created. But same flags are what forensic would have done if you had called them later to do it. That's what is meant by saying the forensically acceptable of forensic standard analytics on that.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Just moving to the last question before we conclude the webinar today. Someone has asked about the acceptance to the statutory auditor and regulatory bodies towards this new technology era, for example, robotics, etc., and the things that you talked about. So, what is the acceptance for them?
I think the acceptance has jumped up in the last 8-9 months because of COVID. It would have taken people longer to accept if COVID hadn't happened, but because COVID is there, disruption is being accepted. Obviously, most of you who have worked with statutory auditors now in the last 2 quarters would have realized there was a lot of flexibility that they are bringing in, and they're willing to use specifically in PVs and capital, capitalization, etc., etc. So we have not seen much of a pushback from regulators. I mean, regulators have not yet got into it because this, to our mind and to the best of knowledge, even for all of you, I think regulators will always play a catch up as the technology evolves. We still are figuring out technology as simple as Twitter and Facebook, etc. So that will always remain an issue. Regulator will figure out data and privacy probably a little later than we use. But from a regular auditor perspective, I think their ability to accept and adopt is much higher now with COVID. It would have been difficult, but now I think it's completely acceptable to them.
That's so true. I think it's forced us to work digitally and move towards automation and everything much faster than we would have traditionally. So with that, I would like to thank you, Abhishek, for the time you've taken out today for the IIA Women's Circle event. So on behalf of the committee, I thank you again. And we for your insights, and especially I was quite interested in some of the estimations you made, especially in terms of saving 50% time just by using analytics throughout the audit cycle. I mean, that's a lot. So it gives a lot of things for people to think about and take back from this webinar. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And yes, we can log off now. Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you. Bye-bye.